Hello, everybody. Welcome to Endgame Sensei, where I give two hapless IMs a position that they will not understand and which they will flounder in. I am playing a tournament myself this weekend, and my coach, KGB, has said that I should not stress myself out before this event. So, I'm hoping that they do not stink up the dojo too badly, because I need to rest. All right, here it is, my friends. Black to move. They are going to play this position at least one time. They might play it with both colors, but it's kind of an epic position. First trivia question will be: do either of you guys recognize this position?
Yeah.
Ooh, David, do you recognize before he tells us
Nope.
what it is?
Nope.
All right, Kosti, tell us, who is it?
This has got to be the famous Fischer Taimanov, part of the 6-0 experience.
That's right. Very good. Yeah. And this is a famous position, which even if you've known it, I want to say this for myself. I'll just speak for myself. Even if you know it, like I've studied it several times, my sense is that I'm just writing out the poll here for people. White is winning. White is much better. Equal. Black is better. Even if you know it, I want to say I've studied it several times, and I will say that there's a lot of finesse in this. This, I feel, is the basis for what we call the Fischer ending, rook and bishop against rook and knight, and why that endgame is special, i.e. this game is the basis of that. And what do I want? What am I trying to say here? I am trying to say that there's a lot of skill required in winning something like rook and bishop versus rook and knight. And I feel like most of us don't have it. I'm not sure I have it. And this game demonstrated this game demonstrated what we're talking about when we mean skill with rook and bishop versus rook and knight. So here we have the chat out. Who is better? And the different, some of you might be watching on YouTube. We have white is winning. White is much better. Equal. Black is better. I myself have vacillated on this evaluation here. And there's some interesting notes to this game as well in Endgame Strategy by Shereshevsky, which we've got several positions that we've covered on Endgame Sensei have come from that book. All right. So
All right. I cast a vote for the dojo account.
You can't cast a vote for the dojo account. Come on, that's not okay. That's not okay. What did you vote? What was your vote?
I voted that white's winning.
Okay, Kosti, what do you think?
I would say white's much better.
Okay, so we have a difference of opinion.
Ooh, maybe that'll cause Jesse to give me the white pieces.
Maybe. Yeah. While we're waiting for people to vote, and I just want to jabber a little bit so you guys can think about what you would play, because they don't know if they're going to be black or white. They're going to get a time control of 5 minutes and 30 seconds. This is meant to reproduce the conditions of modern endgame play where you got to move quickly. So I'm going to give them that moment to think, this moment to think. We'll jabber a little bit. ChessDojo, some exciting stuff happening. We've got a website. Our millennial finally decided that we were able to do a website, even though millennials don't like websites. So that's kind of cool
Correct.
and interesting. And in this website, what we're doing is some cool stuff, such as we got our training program coming. We talked about that last week on Dojo Talks. David has a course out that we're just kind of figuring out, like, can we put some courses out there instead of doing stuff on YouTube? Is it more fun to do it on our site? Does it make more sense to do it on our site? That way there'll be more of a community aspect, for example, to the site. And in particular, my dream would be that we have a cohort of people moving through the instructive videos that we've got, instructive material. In particular, if it was part of the training program, that's my particular dream. But it's more than that. It could just be resources for people to improve their game. Also, I just want to throw it out as dreams, as long as we're talking about dreams. I'm dreaming that COVID is ending, and I got invited to play a tournament in Denver in May. Maybe you guys can come join me. Denver Open, like May 20th. You guys should come, man. Dojo
We could visit
reunion.
Seth.
We could visit Seth. We got some people in the Denver area. And then
yeah, maybe.
yeah. And also, here's a special dream. Early April, I believe the beginning the 5th, we could go to Reykjavik and play the Reykjavik Open, my friends.
That's a dream.
That's a dream. Sometimes you just got to put it out there. Your dreams,
Yeah.
you know? You got to put your
Yeah.
dreams out there, or else they'll never happen.
Yeah, I mean, you can't assume that you don't get to do any of your dreams, because then you won't.
Okay, we're getting ready for this battle to start, and I will blah blah a little bit once it starts. They will mute their mics, and they will not be able to listen in on these shenanigans. Right, so I'm just getting this baby ready to go. And yeah, and then I'll share a little bit of the few things I think I understand about this position. We'll then look at how they blundered this position, and then we will, maybe if we have time, we'll show the game itself. All right, you animals, are you just about ready?
We're ready.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, make sure that you are in the live section of chess.com. White is much better, has won the poll. I feel like it's a little bit, maybe I shouldn't have asked Kostya what the position was. I have a feeling if they didn't know it was Fischer Taimanov, the results of the poll wouldn't have been so skewed. We primed them. We primed them into believing that this was what was going on.
It better be black to move also, because otherwise...
Yeah, it's black to move, my friend. All right, here we go. Pop. On your marks, get set, go. All right, my friends, they're going to log off, and I'm going to chat us through this thing. I'm not going to say anything. I still hear them a little bit, you know. So, black to move. I'm just going to assume that Kostya can't hear me here. This is where I've analyzed this game many, many times. And this is where Taimanov makes a very natural move. You can imagine him doing it without thinking at all. And it turns out to be a problem of a move. Kostya is black. Thank you very much. And look at that. The clock's already running. I'm saying thank you very much because then I can write it in at the bottom. Kostya is black. I got to make sure, too, that the times are correct. If Kostya... King D6, dude. Okay. Now, Kostya... We got to say, he's been stinking up these endgame senseis quite a bit recently. But we're going to have to say King D6 exclam. And what is the very natural move? The natural move would have been B6. And the problem with B6, and it's not immediately obvious, is that, and that's why King D6 is such a good move, is that if B6, White has bishop F1, which was played, exclam, and A5 is kind of sort of forced. And then what is the problem? The problem then is that you violated what could be called Capablanca's rule. Namely, the pawns are all on dark squares, and what this does is just gives free rein to the bishop. Now, you might say to yourself, your first intuition might be, hey, bro, I'll just put my pawns all on dark squares and the bishop won't have anything to attack. And that's where the brutality of the Fischer Endgame and this particular game comes into effect. Because putting all your pawns on dark squares means that the bishop can cut the board and gains more squares of its own control. So if you imagine B6, bishop F1, A5, which is what happened in the game, the bishop can go to C4, can go to B5. It's got so much more scope. And with that scope, it can work to use its extra squares, controls many more squares than the knight, to dominate it. And that's what we see in the Fischer Endgame. So this is a fascinating move here with King D6. Mr. Proust played rook E3. And I should mention that the move prior, Fischer played rook E5. Right? Rook E5 to open the bishop. And now rook E3. So here's a real question. My sense is Black would like to play some kind of setup with b5, i.e., to get your pawns on the light squares. However, Mr. Bruce's move does make it at least difficult. If b5, let's say rook a3, it's hard to imagine how you don't lose your a pawn. So, just the point too we should say of Kostya's move is that on king d6, if bishop b7 instead of rook e3, there was rook b8, and rook takes b2 with counterplay. So, here's an interesting question. Can Kostya play a move like c4? It looks problematic because snip, snap, snook, snatch, cratch, that's a bummer that your pawn is getting snaggled at the end, isn't it? And you're getting that whacked. So, Kostya needs a good move, and I like rook e3, at least from the perspective of creating problems for white. Maybe rook b8 is what we need to do. Intending b5, and then if rook a3, we have rook b6. And one thing that Black could hope for, and I imagine this is what Taimanov in the game actually hoped for too, was that his king would be more active. And if you could imagine, could somehow get b5 and c4, maybe you can squiggle and wiggle with your king over on the queen side. All right, here we go. Kostya's thinking deep. Now remember, they got 30 seconds extra per move here. 30 seconds extra. Yeah. And this is the, oh, okay. C4 was played. Now, I have to admit, I just discarded them. I just discarded it, Kostya. So, what is Kostya's answer if bishop b7? That is our question. I'm not sure I have an answer. So let's imagine what Kostya's thinking. David snips. Kostya snaps. David raps. Kostya baps. David snicks. And then where's Kostya's snack? I'm not sure I get it. Because once that bishop lands on c4, it's a big deal. And it's a pawn. Is there a special trick? I don't see it. It would not be the first time that I've blundered, but I still don't see it. Let's get rid of those arrows. It looks like a football diagram. Maybe knight d5 after bishop a6 is a question from Icy. Let's look at it. Bishop b7, rook b8, bishop a6, knight d5. But are we trapping it or something? Like, let's say, now, I see, I will have to say this. He's got to have something like that in mind. So I think it's good that you're asking the question, even if we end up deciding it doesn't work. So knight d5, the rook's most plausible squares are e5 and e1. And then Black needs some kind of magic after that. Bishop e7 was played. So I see, we are going to see what Kostya's intentions were here. He played, it looks like he played, actually, this isn't showing me how long he thought on c4, but I think he actually had to have thought a while. Question from Putsy. Do you want your pawns on light or dark squares as black? And one of the things I said at the very beginning I think is important, we'll look at the original game, is Taimanov in the game played, instead of King d6, which was in fact Shereshevsky's recommendation. Maybe Kostya had that in the back of his mind. Maybe he's already primed, though, for a special move because I set it up as, black to play. In any case, in the original game, Taimanov played b6 and a5, putting his pawns on dark squares, and it really gave free rein to the light bishop. And this is the game where the term Fischer Endgame was born, at least to my mind, because of the complete domination that was then experienced with bishop over knight. Okay, so it was not knight d5, but this rook b2. David confidently snips, and black needs something real special here, as in super special. Kostya, what's wrong with bishop f7, boss? Okay, let's think about it from Kostya's point of view. So he's saying bishop f7 and something like knight g4, and then he's going to say, I'm a hero. Maybe he's a hero. I don't know. Doesn't look too heroic to me. Doesn't look that heroic to me, buddy. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Now, David could also consider bishop b3 with the notion that, hey, the pawn on f7, I don't even need that thing. If I could take that pawn on f7, though, I'd really like to take it. Pawns are people and everything, but every pawn I take on the light squares means that my light square bishop is even more powerful. And this brings us to the point. What is the point of the bishop? What is a rook ending, aka the Fischer ending? The point is that the long-range pieces, the bishop and the rook, both become more powerful in the endgame as the board opens up. And the knight can control a maximum of 8 squares. Let's look at the bishop right now. Bishop maximum of 13. Let's look at the bishop right now. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? So already 10. If we got rid of that pawn, it would be 11. And then you can say to yourself, well, why is it such a big deal then that the rook and bishop as a combination are a big deal? Because the problem with the bishop is it only touches half the board. So the rook is an important auxiliary, I can't pronounce that word, auxiliary to the bishop because it controls the dark squares, the other color. And a metaphor that no one else likes, but I like it a lot, is that for thousands of years, dogs and humans co-evolved. And these dogs and humans hunted together. It was a magnificent deal. They hunted together. The humans could track, and they could kill, and the dogs could smell and track, but especially smell. We can't smell. I think our forebears maybe could smell better than we can, but not even close to dogs. Dogs are amazing. And dogs have short bursts of speed. As a team, hunting, magnificent. Totally magnificent. And so what am I trying to say? Sometimes diversity is a good thing. Bishops and rooks together, augmenting each other. So that's my metaphor. No one likes it. I like it a lot. And here's a question. Did David not take on f7 because he was worried about something, or he just had a story about, I don't need to be greedy? I didn't see anything concrete. So bishop f7, knight g4, rook d3, check, let's say king e7, bishop b3 back. I didn't see anything to worry about for white. I might be missing something, but I didn't see anything. Okay, so there we go. So the natural move here would be king e7, just to guard the pawn. And one of the reasons I really want to take that pawn is it gives me some more ways to win the game. And black does have a certain degree of compensation with the rook on the 7th rank. Now, maybe David just saw this position and said, screw it, buddy. I got a4, a5, and I'm ready to roll. Maybe. Maybe. But black always has rook b1, a1. And the knight is a tricky piece. The knight will do things like knight d7, c5 soon. So I'm not 100%. Zondebach, thank you for subscribing. We need some subscriptions around here. I can't pronounce subscriptions. Yeah. So I'm a little nervous for Mr. Proust here, just because it's hard to make progress now. And black's progress would be something like knight d7. Even knight e8, d6 is a measure of progress, or knight e4. Sure, knight e4 is also a move. Got to be a little careful about all the details, but black definitely will have several moves for counterplay if white doesn't have something cool here. In chat, we have Icy saying rook c3. This was before it happened, I think. Rook c3, knight g4, rook c2, rook b1 would be a funny way to mess up. Namely, knight e3 comes at the end. Rook c3, though, has a bigger intention, I think, than just rook c2. Namely, black has to worry about rook c7. In any case, I still think knight d7 would be the big question. Knight g4, though, might also be counterplay. And poor Kostya, this is why we do this. Is you don't get 1,000 minutes to figure it out, buddy. Okay, so he's just going for broke now. And there's several. Let's say white goes and snip snops over there. Rook c7, king d6, rook f7. Then the problem will be that after a move like knight h2, it'll be hard to avoid perpetual check and just general counterplay by the knight. Now, if the black pawn were on f5, after rook b2, king f3, rook f2 would be mate. Unfortunately, that pawn is not on f5. And now I gotta say, I don't understand what Kostya wants after king f3. Does he have a magic trick? This looks bad. This looks real bad, because the advantage of the king coming out is that, well, the rook's whole point on being on the 7th was to trap the king in. And now the king is out, and if the king wanders over to, let's say, the queen side, he will be a shepherd of Mr. A pawn. So king e4 is definitely the natural move here. And black desperately needs some kind of counterplay against the white king side, because white is going to do stuff like a4 and then start pushing the drama. Plus, rook c7 is not, and that hasn't been contained yet. I don't even know what you're supposed to deal with that. How do you deal, dude? How do you deal? How do you deal? This looks abysmal. Kostya, you played the right first move, and then you're stinking up my endgame again. My coach KGB said, no more stress, Cry. No more stress the day before the tournament. What are you doing? And Kostya's here stressing me out. Stressing me out, getting me off my game. Jeez, Malise. All right, knight f1. is there really a threat? Well, Kostya, he might be hoping for something like a4 and then knight d2 would win a piece, and then the game would be tragically turned. Okay, and now at least David has to think about, say, rook c7, king moves somewhere, takes on f7, and then you got to think about knight takes g3. First look says rook c7 takes f7's got to be winning. It's just too much. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Yep, it's pretty nasty. So I don't know. This is one of those positions you're like, I don't know. And I think King E8 the way to provide the most drama? Maybe. The intention would be something like, if rook f7, we got our ye old rook takes b3. And if bishop f7, we'll play king d8, and then you got to at least worry about knight g3. Looks completely winning for white, but still. But I don't know what else to do, because this one, now the rook's landing on f7 with a thud, right? That's a thud, my friends. Knight d2, king f5, good night. Knight g3, right? King f3 would be ye old default move. I don't know where I come with that ye old stuff. I don't know where that comes from. Oh, king f3, knight h5, that looks pretty nasty. Yeah. No. This is crispy critters, my friends. This is crispy critters. So I want to say with this move, we'll look at it. And I'm happy Kostya did the move king d6, because that'll give us a chance to think about what black should have done, I think, instead of c4. Because when I looked at it, I was like, oh, maybe it's not so simple, you know? I had studied that game many, many times before I had read Shereshevsky's notes and thought about it, where he mentioned king d6. Actually, I remember I read the Shereshevsky book years ago and forgot it. That's one of the advantages of getting old. You know, you get to have the joy of rediscovery. In any case, I'm trying to say something really deep. Okay, king g4. Now, g6, f5. Is that the end of the world? It certainly feels like the end of the world. g6, f5, rook g2, king f3. That's no way to have fun. That is no way to have fun. In any case, I had studied the game many times without really noticing the possibility of king d6, just kind of admiring Fischer's play. And then with king d6, I was like, oh, right, that beginning position, you might want to make a claim that white's winning after b6 and a5. You can be persuaded of that, I guess, if you look at the way the game goes. But maybe after this king d6, and I think followed by rook b8 would be my big question, then maybe it's not so simple. We'll take a look. Okay, rook g2. Dumb question. Would rook g7, king f6 work? It's a dumb question. There's no reason to try it. There's no reason to do it, Cry. There's no reason to do it, okay? Take it easy. Take it easy, buddy. No reason for that kind of talk around here, okay, buddy? No reason at all. Okay. So the bummer for black, we got to say, is even if it were his move, it'd be pretty unclear, like, what we would want to do. Maybe rook g3, something like that. Yeah. h4 is certainly a move here. Maybe Bruce is thinking about rook g7. The thing about rook g7 is that you're introducing a level of complexity. I don't think you want it. And in particular, just concretely, well, you just don't want to give away with the rook anyway. We're talking about the Fischer Endgame. The whole idea was that the rook and the bishop were a cool team. But the reason you would consider it is just to try to make your life easier. It would end up making your life harder, but you know what I mean. You're just trying to make it easier. Trying to simplify it in some way. Yeah. Bishop e6. Interesting move. I think I'm on board with that. We stop knight d7. If knight e8, which is an ugly move anyway, we can do things like rook d7. And I guess the question is, do we fear rook g3? Not really, right? Not really. Okay, bishop e6. Proust says, by the way, he's been kind of proving himself in these endgame senseis. He's been knocking Kostya around a little bit. Even though Kostya is the grand tournament winner here. He's the one who has not been stinking up the dojo in his tournament play. All right, rook g3. What else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Some people are talking about pushing the a-pawn. I think you could always do it, but it's important to see that once you push it, your bishop is insecure. So it'd be nice to wait if we can, just to improve the position. Now, I think one cool thing is after h4, is black in a kind of zugzwang? That's one of my little questions. I assume, though, h4, we just go back to g2. Rook h3, then rook g7, everything falls apart. And of course, h4, rook g4, we got rook f6. We could play our rook g7 now. I still don't like it. It might. I still don't like it. I still don't like it. There's h4. Makes a lot of sense. And poor Kostya now, these positions are nasty to play because you're just like, oh, it's so ugly. So ugly. But I guess rook g2. I don't know what else the guy's supposed to do. I don't know what else he's supposed to do. h5, okay. Maybe intending rook g4. Here comes a4, my friends. Now, there's an obvious question with a4. What about rook a3? No, rook a3, we just play rook g7. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me, boss. Oh, yeah, this is sad. This is a sad business. Okay. Now, is the knight a tricky piece? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Now, one amazing thing that white can now consider is you could consider losing your bishop in the following way. He doesn't even have to. I was going to say rook g7, knight e3, king f6. But hey, just check first, then take on g7. And hey, you're winning the pawn for free. Thank you very much. That's a bummer, isn't it, huh? Rook G7. Bam! Thank you. And the importance is not just the pawn, but the more pawns we get rid of, the more open things get for that bishop and rook. Like, there's no knight F6 anymore. There's no hold for the knight. Yep. It's a rough business. Proust, man. Actually, I think he played this pretty well. There was no point that I can remember in this thing that I was upset with what he did. Just keeping my blood pressure good for tomorrow's event. Isn't black toast? Ass host pud. Looks bad, host pud. Looks real bad. Kostya's stinking up the NK sensei. Stinking it up bad. Looks real bad. And you can see it. The knight's just immediately getting dominated by the bishop. If it goes to h6, it's clear there's no squares for the knight. On e3, also clear. No squares for the knight. Nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Rook f3, I don't know what else he's supposed to do. It's a bad business. Rook f3, we could play f5, but also just king e5, playing for full domination. David self-proclaims all kinds of things. Adam, come on. Don't trust him. Don't trust David when it comes to a self-analysis. Self-evaluation. Forget it, buddy. Forget it. On king e5, I'm assuming knight c2. I think king e5 feels like a very Magnus move. Actually, king e5, knight c2, rook c7. Ooh, that's an example of the knight getting dominated. Why knight c2? Because king e4 is a threat. Oh no. King e5 looks good, my friends. King e5, king b4. Oh, king e5. David's playing this well. He's been playing this well, man. So knight c2's out. This is a great example, actually, of even though we're up 1,000 pawns, it might feel like it doesn't matter. It's still a great example of the knight getting dominated. Imagine the position without the pawn on a4. Still toast. Still toast. No g2. You gonna go somewhere nasty like f1 or d1? I guess. You know? Not a pleasant for a peasant moment. We're assuming something nasty now. Knight d1, rook f2. King e4 is the threat. The rook has nowhere to go where it gets to protect the knight. So king e4, game over. Nowhere for the rook to go. Right? Kaputsk. Kaputsk, Mr. Gagutsk. Yep. King e4, rook f1. Okay. It's true it's not immediately over, but that f-pawn is a-rolling, and that king is on the wrong side. Yep. Rook g5. Hey, Bruce, you didn't say king e4, buddy? What are you doing? You want to go? He's a snipper-snapper. He's a pawn snipper-snapper. King e4. Oh, the reason I would really, even if, this is obviously winning, but let me just tell you, as somebody who's been a victim of the knight hopping all over my face, I want that knight gone. We can talk as much as we want about the Fischer Endgame. We've all had the knight trick us in some nasty endgame. King e4, boss. Get rid of that knight. Get rid of it. King e4, boss. King e4. David said something there. I don't know. Sometimes he mutes his mic. Sometimes he doesn't. I don't know. All right, Brucey Kins. Why aren't you thinking about king e4, boss? What's the deal? King e4. Maybe we need some music. Might need some music here. Now, as a humorous note, the F and H pawns are a draw if the black king has a blockading position, and if you know what you're doing. Maybe we'll do that as an endgame sensei at some point too. And I'm just trying to imagine why David didn't do it. Maybe he didn't see it. I don't know. It's possible. Is this winning? Yeah, it's winning. It's true. This is winning. Very hard for him. He might just be saying to himself, hey, David too, he's a maximalist. Like, I just want to make my life easy. You know? He's a maximalist. He wants to just hurt people. Even though he's a communist, he really wants to hurt people. He's into the pain. You know? And Rook G5 is trying to, I guess the point of that instead of King E4 is just pure pain. Pure pain. All right, there it is, my friends. Okay, so let's do this. Let's grab this thing. And I got this. This was a Magnus Carlsen game I was looking at earlier, but I'm going to hijack this window. And we're going to put this baby in. Boom. All right, so let me invite them to the board. This is Mr. Proofs. And then we're going to invite Kostya Coast. Okay. Kostya, first of all, buddy.
What?
King D6? Props, dude.
Good move, yeah?
Yeah, that was a great move. Do you remember what the move was in the game?
I mean, I felt like he probably played like B6 and then like traded rooks with rook E8.
Well, no, Fischer didn't give him that chance.
I think if black plays b6, white can go bishop b7, a6, bishop a6. And then there's bishop b5 check, so you can't play rook e8. And next move, the bishop comes to c4, and you're in hell.
That might also be true. Fischer played bishop f1 and a5, bishop c4. So similar.
Okay.
Similar.
Yeah. And then I think rook E8 happened, and then he just traded, and it was...
No, you can't play rook
Very
e8
nice.
because your pawn f7's hanging.
Oh, that's true. So you play rook F8?
Yeah, you had to play rook f8.
Yeah, rook f8, and that's torture.
So one point I made that we can talk about is, first of all, like I was telling everybody else when you guys were playing, I had looked at this many times and didn't appreciate that with King D6, black has real saving chances. And what happens in the Fischer game is then the pawns get put on the wrong color for black, the dark squares, where then the white bishop just total free reign. Total free reign in the position. So King D6, let's look into it.
Yeah. I was going to play that move too, like during the time what we were thinking about the position that you gave us at the start.
Yeah.
I thought b6 was terrible, and you have to try King D6. But I wasn't sure what to do for white. You know, I was trying to think from white and black's perspective at the start. And so rook e3, you know, I wasn't sure I was going to do that, but I'd started thinking about it.
Well, right. So I had looked at this position, and I didn't see anything super great for white here. I thought your move was fine. By the way, Dave, this was a good game you put together, buddy.
Oh, really?
I didn't see anything wrong with anything.
I thought you were going to like make fun of me for like blundering King E4 at the end, because that was pretty egregious.
King E4.
Well, I thought we were actually talking about how maybe you wanted to torture him and all this other stuff. And
No, I didn't see it until I let go of my other move.
Okay, I thought, Kostya, let's look at this. This was my instinct for you, buddy, is I thought, so in general, I think black wants to achieve like B5 and C4 and maybe some counterplay on the queen side.
Right.
But in general, to put the pawns on the light squares.
Wow, so Kostya had the right idea completely.
Well, but here, what happens with C4 is not only does he lose a pawn, but then the board just lights up, right? So I was thinking rook B8. So now intending B5 and rook B6.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I just, yeah, my instincts didn't really speak to this move.
So did you miss something, or what happened with the C4 thing?
Yeah, I guess I wanted. I guess I didn't realize Bishop B3 would be pretty annoying. You know, I was kind of more expecting this one. And then I would play Knight G4.
Isn't he much?
And I thought,
Okay, I thought he was killing you here too, but
I don't know. I thought it was at least tricky, and you know, at least my rook is active. Uh,
I felt like it was a good practical chance, honestly. Like I felt like there was a high probability it was going to get out of my control.
okay, fair enough. I was thinking Rook D3, but
King E7.
King E7, and now we could do Bishop B3 or Bishop H5.
And then either way, I think black can take the pawn, right?
Well, if he takes the pawn, is his knight ever getting out?
No. Oh, I didn't think of rook E3, bishop E2. Shoot.
But even if it's just like black's move, even if it's just like black's move and he takes on A2, I'm still not certain he gets out.
Well, I wasn't sure how to make any progress after like A3, rook A2 or some position like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I could just like run the A pawn
You
like
just run the A pawn, yeah.
and take my hands off the keyboard.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there's-
exactly.
G6, H5 ideas.
Okay.
But even G6, white can just take it at the moment. Oh, you're going to play King F6.
Yeah, I'll go King F6 if I need to.
But bishop, I got Bishop D1. The knight's still not getting out.
There's bishop D1.
I want to go.
There might even be rook
H5.
D6. There might even be rook D6 check and take on G6.
Yeah, there was all kinds of things. Yeah. But okay, I thought that was clever. Like, and I definitely, I felt both were winning.
Yeah. Can we just take a look
Yeah.
at Rook B8?
Yeah.
I feel like I definitely like considered the move, but yeah, for just some reason, I don't know. No part of me wanted to play it. I don't know why.
I think you got to what
does
you
make
got to
sense.
see is that like we will. I think the only reason I thought of it, obviously, it looks nasty at first because it looks passive, right? But is that we can't play B5 directly because of Rook A3.
Yeah.
So Rook B8 has the intention of B5, and then we don't have to worry about Rook A3, right?
Yeah.
And then I think black. What does black want? He wants a blockaded structure where maybe the king wiggles and diggles on the queen side or something, right?
Uh-huh.
You know, you got some chances.
Oh, yeah. This is quite a move.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I would be real interested, like, to talk to Fischer about this position. I would be like, bro,
Maybe
do you got anything here?
maybe rook A3, Jesse.
Rook A3, yeah, makes sense.
Well, then Kostya can do his C4 move.
Some deep prophylaxis. Okay, rook A5.
You have a threat?
I'm just prophylaxising.
You're prophylaxising?
Yeah, just H3, King F2. White has moves.
I mean, my king's on G1. I can definitely improve my position.
Yeah, but black is you're testing the luck too, right? Because like both knight G4 and knight D7. That's tricky. That knight's a tricky piece.
I'll play rook D5 check against knight G4
I wanted you to
and
play
against knight D7.
King E4, Mr. Proust, because I was like, get rid of that knight. It's a tricky piece, man.
Oh, yeah, it is. But I also sort of had it like tamed by the bishop on E6. I thought.
No, I thought that I thought you were just being so cool about it. Like, I'm not going to trade my bishop for that knight, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. No, maybe something. Well, right. I mean, let's just say I don't know if Rook A3 is the move, but
Yeah, definitely better chances here, of course. Yeah.
I think on a practical level, this game could go either way after Rook B8. Or actually, here's a funny thing. Here's something I want to say actually. So, an insight I had. Oh, okay. Let me just make fun of a dojo to make this point. Okay. So Charlie Silva, rated around 1500, is got a coach, not one of us, and this coach is pushing him to learn like D4, C4, G3, some hectic like positional squeeze stuff, and it reminds me like, you know, back in the day, the Queen C2 Nimzo was very popular, and my friend David Vigorito wrote a whole tome on this Queen C2 Nimzo. The whole point of the Queen C2 Nimzo is to get the bishop advantage, to sacrifice time, tempi, to get the bishop advantage, and then you're dreaming of some kind of position like this, where the bishop is a champion. And the skills required for that, doing it, very deep. And I think we'll look briefly at the Fischer game. I mean, it's intense, man. We're talking about domination on a just like seismic level that no one had, like my sensei Smyslov, he really thought, I think till his dying breath, that the knight was as good as the bishop. That was just the old school opinion, And that this game that we're going to look at, I think, was one of the games that changed it. It was like, oh, new level. And it took even decades after until the computer came out with the algorithms. And now everybody's kind of used to it because you turn on a computer and every time the computer has a bishop, it's like, here we go. The computer loves the bishop, loves the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would want to know, it would be interesting to me to ask super GM players, maybe Fischer himself, like, what would you do after rook b8? And do you think, like, how would you evaluate it? Like, to me,
I feel good about rook a3 to a5. White's winning.
Oh, I don't feel good about it. No, I don't feel good about it. I just feel like there's too much chances for counterplay. Maybe you want to play bishop f3 first even or something.
Or even like c3 a move?
Maybe c3. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's complicated.
For who?
There's chances for black to create drama.
For black to play c3?
Yeah. Any case, interesting position. I would say, I guess, just because I would say white's better, but as I know as black, I wouldn't be too unhappy because the knight's gonna wiggle and jiggle.
Yeah. Oh, Jesse, let's ask you about one other thing.
Yeah.
Right after king d6,
Yeah.
if bishop takes b7 there, rook b8,
Yeah.
bishop takes pawn,
Good.
rook b2,
Yeah.
and then let's just ask the question like a4, rook c2.
Yeah.
Is this potentially anything or?
Good question. And also we could ask, I thought actually you were going to say bishop c4, rook takes bishop f7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, then knight g4
Or c4.
sort of directly recovers the pawn as well as c4.
C4 actually might just end my party right away, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought any position where I have a c-pawn is fine. Even if I'm pawn down, 2 pawns down.
The white pieces aren't particularly coordinated to deal with it.
Well, right, and
Or
one of the
coordinated
things
for anything.
about the beginning position with if you get that rook b8 move in is you could claim, and this position kind of shows it, is that the black king is potentially just much better than this king, especially if we get this business happening, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but anyways, David's point is a4,
Yeah.
rook c2.
I mean, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
It's like we need the a pawn to queen more than we need the f7 pawn, right? Because black's got distinct counterplay with the c pawn. So I was just wondering, like,
just
the
intuitively,
white's pieces are less well coordinated, but is there any way to do something with the a pawn?
I mean, the way I would say it is white's down a piece, right? White's down a piece here because his king's not involved.
Yeah. Maybe the next move here is rook e2.
Okay, and then rook c1, rook a1.
Deal a little bit with that king thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, just we don't need to like analyze anything. But do you have any like instinct that this is like nothing or worse for white or
Nothing, and white could definitely lose, yeah. Because imagine, like, you play rook e2,
Can you even trade, yeah?
check to the middle. You might trade, but look, why am I worse?
Yeah.
My king is the shepherd. He's coming.
and the bishop's kind of a sad sack. I mean,
Sad
if you don't
sack,
even
yeah.
play c3, you can kind of like I don't know.
Yep.
He's almost trapped. White can't move things well. Yeah. All right, cool. That's what I thought. I just wanted to check on it because it's a major option.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at the game. And let me invite you guys to this other board. Or timeout. Timeout. No, I can do this better. I will just import. I will
Jesse,
import my board.
In our game, you didn't think that Kostya had enough with the rook on the second rank. You always thought.
No, I thought actually let's look a little bit more because I thought you played it well. I would have taken on f7, but
Okay.
this Rook
But
c3
I knew you were watching over me, ready to call me a pawn grover.
Rook c3 was a cool move, and you know, maybe Kostya's next move is incorrect, especially where he plays Rook b1, right? But it's hard.
But he's got to do something because I'm threatening Rook c2 and Rook c7, which I think if Black doesn't move, either of those moves could be considered winning. So he needs to do something.
I'm with you. And I thought Rook c3 was a great move, and especially it justifies, I think, Bishop b3, because it's kind of forced, right? After Bishop b3.
Yeah.
No, that looks good, man. No, looks good. And
Okay.
and right, this whole thing was a little bit, yeah. No, that Rook c3 was tight. Okay, I'm gonna bring in El Fisheranto, and we'll just kind of, we could study it honestly for days. Anytime I have a student, we talk about Fischer Endgame. If that comes up, I refer to this game. So I've spent a lot of time on it. I don't claim to master the techniques involved here in this game because they are dark. We will see, my friends. They are dark. All right, here we go. Boom. And we're going to start at move Rook e5. Just move 24. We're at move 24. This is the beginning. We're going to go to move 71. And for the purposes of this show, let's just let it wash over us to get a sense. One of the key things I said, I'll just repeat, also for you guys, that you know this, but this is just, I think, a worthy thing to say. The reason that the bishop is better than the knight is because it controls more squares. The reason it's worse is because it doesn't control half the board. So the reason that the Fischer Endgame is such a cool thing is that the rook fights for the dark squares, the squares the bishop can't work for, covering its, disadvantage. Rook f8, King d6, and I wonder, especially with the old timers, the Soviets, were they like, yeah, Black can still hold this. Maybe they were, I don't know. All right, here we go. Check to the miserable king.
I think they did. Yeah, I think they thought this was holdable.
So c3, put the pawns on the opposite color of the bishop. And this is not as much of a crime to put a pawn over there, just to nail everything down.
I was going to do that too. There was some position where I was calculating. I was like, I would play a4 here. Is that a crime? But I feel like I have to. Ooh, other side.
So now the bishop has more scope. And the bishop can control a maximum of 13 squares. Rook can control a maximum of 14. And the bishop right now is getting close to the power of a rook. And the other thing about any kind of bishop versus knight endgame is the bishop can lose a move in Zugzwang situations, but the knight cannot, and we're going to see that here too. It's the terrible life. It's just a terrible thing, man.
Oh. Oh. Oh, God. It's been a long time since I saw this. Boy, is that painful.
It's just epic, dude. It's totally epic. Yeah. I mean, so there's game 2 of this match, which is also bishop and rook versus rook and knight. And that is also a beatdown. But this one is just like, oh my gosh,